Hey, Steph, how you
Yo,
doing?
how you doing?
Doing good, man.
Thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation with me. I want to introduce you to all the followers and people that are watching. This is Scott Kelly, a highly esteemed NASA astronaut. I don't know the specific title. I don't want to. I'll let you speak on that exactly your background, your history, so people can really know who you are.
Yeah, that's good. That's pretty good. I'm a retired Navy captain, astronaut. Flew in space 4 times, twice on the space shuttle, twice to the International Space Station, and recently spent almost a year on board the ISS, getting home in 2016.
Yeah, I'd much rather you go through that than me try to roll through the list.
And I can't shoot a 3-pointer to save my life, so I think we're fair.
That sounds good. But just so that people understand the background, obviously, there's been a lot of conversations and reaction to a podcast that I was on about 2 weeks ago, where we were having a kind of a just impromptu conversation, and it started to go down into some conspiracies, and I made a comment about the moon landing. It was a very unfortunate situation for me because it's a comment that was made in jest and not to be taken seriously. But the headlines and the reaction kind of took a life of its own. And quite honestly, you were one of the first people that reached out, wanting to have a conversation with me in particular. I think that it was important for me to understand, one, the magnitude of, things that I say in my comments and how much weight they carry, no matter if I, am joking or not. But to really honor that in every situation that I am, I put myself in, and for me to reflect on the last week, it's been one of those kind of situations where I've had President Obama reach out. I've had yourself, one other astronaut that really want to educate me on how significant the moon landing was. Obviously, it was real, but in terms of the sense of national pride and how that exploration for mankind has pushed boundaries and limits on what is possible. Pushed our imagination for what is what we can accomplish if we put resources in our mind, and obviously guys like you who have dedicated their life's work to that industry and pushing us forward as a society and a human race. And so I do not want in any way, shape, or form to demean the significant accomplishment that you and people that you work with on a daily basis were able to to make a reality. And so for that, I'm obviously genuinely sorry for how that came across, and I want to use this as an opportunity, obviously, to promote some positivity, some progress for us as we talk about again NASA's work that's ongoing today. And then you reached out to me and wanted to have that conversation. So I wanted to kind of put a question out to you in terms of I don't have much background and knowledge and information on exactly the ins and outs of what goes on in NASA, kind of what your experience has been, and really just to start, kind of why did you get into that profession and kind of what's your experience been working for NASA and being an astronaut?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm kind of familiar a little bit with these internet stories taking on a life of its own, because I said something recently that just went absolutely insane, and it's unfortunate, and it's really hard to walk back. And the other thing is, I actually get a lot of people when I do public speaking that'll bring these things up about the moon and the Earth being flat, and it's funny. I get it. I think it's funny at times, but what happens is then when people believe those things, they believe the other things that are more important, like climate change not being real, and vaccines, and 9/11 being a government conspiracy theory. So that's why I recognize, and I think this is so important to have a conversation like this, because it puts our it highlights science, like you said, and science is so important to our to our kids, to our country, to our economy. So, I got involved in this as a pilot in the Navy. At first, I flew airplanes. I actually wasn't really a great student. I'm really a good example of a guy that didn't really do too well in high school.
Right.
But I found some inspiration in a book and changed my life. And it made me think that I could do something much greater than myself. And I worked really hard, and I became an astronaut, and I had the privilege of flying in space a couple times. First time to the Hubble Space Telescope, long time ago. Probably, you were a little baby when I flew the first time. Yeah, 1999. Flew a second flight to build the International Space Station on the shuttle, but then, had the real privilege of my career was the time I spent for a long time in space.
It was about 2 years, right?
Yeah, I spent 520 days total, and then, but 340 days at one time.
That's wild.
And what we've been able to accomplish in space is just incredible. We have incredible potential, and a group of people, like you said, that just dedicate their lives to this program that they believe so much in.
I think one of the good things that came out of it for me is I get to educate myself now. Obviously, having a conversation with you, hopefully in the next couple of months, be able to go to the moon lab, the lunar lab, I should say, at NASA and see up close and personal, everything that was accomplished, over 50 years ago. Understand how I myself can articulate, the findings and the experience that that was accomplished there, and be able to explain to people that ask me, kind of what I believe in. So, what should I expect when I go in terms of the experience, the people that are there, the people that work there, and kind of getting immersed into the true history of our country?
Well, are you going to go before or after you play the Rockets? I think that's important. I think it's better that you go before the game than after. I think if you go after, you might not get as good of a reception.
Right, all the Rocket fans down there.
But and they're my team, by the way. So go Rockets! I'm from Houston. But what you can expect. I think you'll expect a great reception. The people there are wonderful. Texans are wonderful in general. The lunar lab is very interesting. You'll have to put on a what's called a bunny suit, so you cover yourself up completely, because the rocks, they don't want to, even today, 50 years later, they don't want to contaminate these rocks. They're still doing science with them. And it's interesting. We got 800 pounds of those rocks from the moon, spread them out through universities all over the world. And they're 200 years older than any rock. Most of them are 200 years older than any rock on Earth. So, clearly they didn't come from Earth. And they came from the moon on the Apollo space program. So, you'll get to see all the stuff in the lunar lab. But then I'm sure they're going to show you other things that NASA's doing right now. We are gearing up to next year, maybe early the year after, launch 2 different types of spacecraft, a SpaceX vehicle to launch crew members into space to the International Space Station. This is the first time we'll be doing that on SpaceX. Boeing's building a similar vehicle to do the same thing. And that'll be the first time that we're launching people from the U.S. soil into orbit. We had space. Virgin Galactic actually launched 2 guys into space in a suborbital flight here a few days ago. But hopefully we'll be launching into orbit again. We're building a rocket for deep space exploration to go back to the moon someday, and you'll get to hear about that. You'll get to see the simulators we use for the space station. So I think it'll mission control, which is very interesting, including the Apollo mission control. I think they'll want to show you that. So, I think all this stuff will be a really good, informative visit for you. And hopefully, if I'm in town, whenever it is, I can stop by and join some of you.
We'd definitely love you to obviously meet you in person and kind of have you walk us through, along with all the other experienced people at NASA. But in terms of like the one other call out and how the reaction has kind of come from these headlines, as you call them, in terms of like for our next generation, the power of science, the belief in science, I know a lot of schools and kind of our generation in terms of STEM learning and things that really can propel our society forward with the next generation, really, investing in themselves in these areas. I know that's important, and I never want my comments to put that in question in terms of, people doubting science, even, and just how important that is for us to keep moving our society forward. I guess in terms, what kind of work have you seen and progress have you seen in that area, and how kids are these days are really opening up their minds and their imagination to what's possible for their future?
I think there are certain areas, certain schools, certain areas of the country that have good STEM education programs, and then other places that are falling behind. And the danger and the risk is that STEM education, science, engineering, math, people that study things, build things, these technologies contribute to our economy is so very important to our country. And it's really what has made our country what it is. It's one of the most important aspects that has made America such an accomplished country, because those are the people, the STEM people. And sometimes people add art in there because of, art allows you to imagine things, and you want to imagine the things that you're going to then later build. But these are the people that build things, build technologies that are so critical to our national security, our national defense, and also our economy. So it is incredibly important. And I also travel around the world, and I see how a lot of other countries that want to kind of catch up to where we are, they do that via a very, very strong STEM education program. So this is something that we, I think, regardless of where we are, always need to be pushing ahead, because other people are trying to catch up. And even a lot of countries have well past us in this area.
I hear you. And that's important, obviously, in terms of the magnitude of my words and kind of how that can move the needle for kids that look up to me on the court, off the court. That's important for people to realize, and the opportunities from career standpoints and things that they can really impact their communities in a small scale and an extremely large scale as they go forward. Not everybody's going to be in space for 2 years. Not everybody's going to be able to be professional athletes, whatever the case is. But there's an amount of opportunity right now and things that can be extremely impactful that they should be able to aspire to be, for sure.
What I try to use, and one thing I try to encourage kids with, especially using the space program as an example, is our country has this incredible capacity to do really amazing technical things. We went to the moon in the 1960s. We built this International Space Station that we've been operating for 20 years, and I think that's the hardest thing we've ever done. I think it's harder than going to the moon. We've done this safely, successfully. A 1 million-pound space station built by an international partnership of 15 countries. We built this in space in a vacuum and extremes of temperatures and pressures, connecting modules together, some of which had never touched each other before on Earth. That this is the hardest thing we've ever done. And if we can do this, and if we believe we can do this, we should believe we can do other things. We can solve the other problems we have in our country, whether it's problems with climate change, whether it's problems with our financial issues we may have, any technical problems or even things that are not technical. When we can prove that we can do the hardest things, well, we can then do the other things. So I use, the space program as an absolute inspiration to inspire. Basically, what I say is, if we can dream it, we can do it. We've proven that.
100%. Well, I know I'm definitely looking forward to going to Houston, seeing things up close and personal. Obviously, educating myself. I hope that you are able to be there. Hopefully the schedules align and some more good will come out of this, and more awareness exactly of all the great work that's going on inside of NASA. But again, thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I know it's been a wild week, and hopefully people understand exactly the true belief in our country and what we've been able to accomplish should never be put into question. And we're definitely going to make some good out of this. So thank you for your time. I know you're a busy man, pulling in a lot of different directions. So again, appreciate that, and hopefully I'll see you down in Texas.
My pleasure, Steph. Great talking to you, and
yes, sir.
hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much, Scott. Appreciate it.
All right. Take it easy.